Welcome to the Footy Museum Podcast. I am Justin Whitty, and I am joined by the co-director of the Footy Museum, Maria Van Dykenlee. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Justin.
And this week, we have a special guest. From time to time, we'll be bringing other people into the museum, people with backgrounds in design and art and maybe even football. But this week, we are joined by the artist, designer, and educator, Olivia Schreiner. Welcome, Olivia.
Hello, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, Maria, Maria or Olivia, anything stand out this week in the world of soccer and football?
Olivia pointed out that there's a common theme to our episodes, and that's that they usually start with me lamenting.
Yes, lamenting what?
Lamenting Leeds' consistent losses.
Wait, I know what comes next. Justin makes fun of the coach.
Uh-oh.
Well, that would, Olivia, that's a touchy subject because the coach was our beloved Jesse Marsh from Racine, Wisconsin,
right.
The only American. And he was fired on Monday.
He was
fired.
You've been predicting that for weeks.
So it was
not a surprise at all.
It's not a surprise. It's still sad. And before we jump right into the recent bad form, which was today, Sunday, Leeds did play Manchester United twice this week. And the first time they played,
we didn't lose.
That's right.
A tie.
A tie.
It was the no manager bounce.
Yes.
We don't have a new manager. we just don't have a manager. And I thought they played pretty well on Wednesday.
I thought they played well on Wednesday, and I thought that they played well today.
Well, that's just the thing with them,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean,
they look like they should be winning, and then surprise, surprise.
they give up weak. I have not watched the game today, so you want to break down?
Okay, so actually, like the whole first half, for a good portion of the first half, they were so strong. They were pressing so much. United, it was like, who's United? I don't know. Or Man United, like who are they? I don't know. They didn't show up.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
This is rough.
but then so many shots. I don't know how many there were on target, but it was like one of these has to go in eventually. And then none of them did. And then the inevitable happened really late in the game, and United scored twice in 5 minutes very quickly. And same old.
Never bet against a Dutchman. That's what I would say.
Oh, sure.
Can I ask how you came to be a Leeds fan?
You may. I don't know. I love an underdog. And
I get that.
And to just pick a top 5 would have felt like
Why?
easy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, though, how you can just decide, and this is a very American fan thing. We can just decide what team we're a fan of. It doesn't have to do with our city or country or anything. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people started following Leeds because not only was an American a coach, but they now have 3 U.S. men's national team players in their midfield who 2 of them, regular starters. The third will be back, I think, Brendan Aronson.
He had an appendicitis.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that goes away once you
get rid of the But tied around the Leeds news of Jesse Marsh being sacked on Monday. One, there's already rumor that he will be picked up by Southampton.
All these rumors, but I can't imagine that.
I don't know. I think I can. I think Southampton has showed with their last coaching hire they don't know what they're doing. They are in last place in the league. I think it's going to be hard to attract a lot of candidates because escaping relegation is going to be very difficult. Jesse showed last year that he's able to withstand a relegation fight. He is a playing style similar to what Southampton wants to do, and I'm sure they could get a sweet deal that, no guarantees beyond the end of the season. He will be an improvement on the former Luton manager that they had for only 12 weeks. So I could see it happening, and I would see him actually doing well because I'm sure he's pretty pissed off. Also, as U.S. men's national team fans might be if he does take that job, because there's a lot of talk that they want him to take the national team job.
Oh, do you think that would be a good thing, though? Like, would you want this guy that's sort of...
I think before he got fired, it was hands down, everyone had dreams that he would be perfect because he's kind of the highest profile U.S.-based coach. But his last 2 jobs, he hasn't done so well. Mm-mm. He pushes a playing style that's not really favorable to the skills that we have. Ironically, the other name being bounced a lot with the national team is...
Bielsa, 2 former Leeds managers.
That's right.
I would rather see Bielsa just because...
You just want that chaos?
I just love him and his chaos and his like grumpy face.
The other news this week, my favorite team, Wrexham, lost in the FA Cup in their second tie against Sheffield United. I believe it was 3-1 or 3-0 or 2-0. I don't even care. I'm just kind of glad they're out. I'm the only anti-Wrexham fan in the world.
I'm sure there are more.
Oh, because he doesn't like Ryan Reynolds.
So as you know, each week on this podcast, we explore the world of football through the design and culture surrounding the most popular game in the world. And currently we are doing that through the design of different crests or badges or logos or however you want to call them from teams from around the world. From teams around the world. And so each week, at the end of each episode, we randomly choose a country, and then we spend the week kind of researching the clubs, usually in the top tier of that country. And then Maria and I each come back with one of the crests that we talk about, and it gives insight on that team and also that country. So that's what we do. And then last week we chose
Ecuador.
Oh, so you each have a team from Ecuador.
Yes, as I said, we then each choose a team.
I thought it was 2 countries. One.
She listened to episode 2.
And I listened to only every other word of any sentence.
Yeah, currently as well.
Well, if you got to the end of episode 2, you know that we started picking the same country.
So a little information about Ecuador. The top league in Ecuador is called Liga Pro or Serie A, right, which are 2 totally different things, but that's fine. It's made up of 16 clubs. Similar to MLS, they play February through December. I guess that makes sense because it's South America, so that's actually through the winter there. The structure of the league seems to change fairly consistently, and I'm not going to go into it, but it's very confusing in terms of how the championship works. And then, so there's 16 teams and they play, and there's Pro Rel. How it all works is a mystery. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah. So, what baffles me is, yes, how much it seems to change, and 2, that they don't always have a championship game.
Yeah.
Because there are 2 rounds to the season, and if you're the top team both rounds, then you're the champion. But if you're not, then there's a championship game.
Yeah. Boy, that sounds thrilling. Isn't that similar to League MX though? I believe it is. Know. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a strange system. Their biggest club, to add more confusion. Well, I would say 2 of the biggest clubs. The first is called Barcelona. And the logo is very similar to the other Barcelona. No affiliation.
0 affiliation.
Wow.
The guy who started the club was just from Barcelona.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm going to name my club Barcelona Sporting Club. And then in some way along the line, we're going to also steal Barcelona's logo.
Wow. Okay.
And then Aucas is the other one.
Aucas.
Okay.
How do you spell that?
Aucas.
Yes.
Aucas.
It's actually a pretty decent league. The International Federation of Football History and Stats ranks it as the 11th strongest league in the world.
Wow.
And the 4th strongest league in South America, which is saying a lot because South America, which is the FIFA region, CONMEBOL, the South American Football Federation, includes Argentina, Brazil, a lot of big countries for sure.
And are they big players in the World Cup? Are they always there type team or?
Well, that's a good question. They haven't been So they were invited to the very first World Cup, and they were like, "Yeah, not interested."
This thing isn't going anywhere.
They're like, "Yeah, we got better stuff to do."
Oh my God.
What year was the first
We're
World
the
Cup?
World Bowl. 1930 was the first World Cup.
That was a while ago.
The professional league wasn't even formed until the 50s, right?
That's true, because the first team did not exist until 1899, when two brothers who had gone to school in England came back and formed a club. And
That's
the league
crazy.
didn't become professionalized until the 50s.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense. But
To
I
have
think
a
that was
World
probably
Cup.
the case in a lot of countries at that point.
Yeah.
Because like the U.S. was like
Yeah, amateur.
in
you
the
had to
World
be
Cup
like-
in the 50s, and they didn't have any sort of major league. They probably had professional league, but yeah.
It's fascinating.
But then they probably shouldn't have passed it up, because it took until 2002 for them to appear in the World Cup again. And since that point,
Really?
yeah. And since that point, they've actually been doing pretty well. They have appeared in the 2002. I just want to get these right. 2008, 2014, and 2022, and they have kind of increased their profile throughout that. And to qualify, they're playing again in a region against some of the top countries in the world. So it says, I think they're really on the up, and it shows that players from Ecuador are now showing up in a lot of leagues in the world. There's quite a few in MLS. There's only 3 in the Premier League that I can find, and they all play for Brighton. Is that correct?
Brighton is the Leeds of Ecuador.
That's right. It is.
Wait.
I think that is the title of the episode. It's so clearly of Ecuador.
Sort of lost me on that. That's okay.
I lost myself on that too.
Well, she's saying
probably
she's saying a lot of Americans have tied themselves to leagues called
Right.
like United States because of the number
And
of
they-
U.S. players.
They created the
Leeds.
ugliest flag in the world
Makes sense.
to
Yeah.
support it.
Ooh, what's Ecuador's flag?
So
That makes sense, though. I think once you make a connection to a team, then you keep making connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Brighton's just at the head of this, the tip of the spear. There's going to be
Oh.
more Ecuadorians in the Premier League.
oh yeah, for sure. That's a hot take from Libby. She's got any transfer news, Libby? Can you name some of the players you see in the Premier League by the end of?
0.
Oh, wait, you're contradicting yourself. You just said you expect to see a lot more.
Oh, I thought you asked me to name a Premier League player.
That's what I interpreted that as.
Okay.
Any Premier League player. Okay, all right.
I know a former coach.
But you just
What's his name?
It's Jesse Marsh.
Very good. So that's just kind of an overview.
One other thing that I
Yeah.
read about it was below Serie B in the like second category, the tier below, it's divided up by region to reduce travel, but like the playing schedule, the number of regions, and then getting into the playoffs for that level causes it to be extremely difficult to get promoted out of that.
Explain. So you play most of your games in your region.
Yeah, so they made it like this to reduce travel on teams, so that ideally teams with less resources and finances would be able to compete with better funded teams. But what it does is you compete with your region, and that's fine. But then if you make it to like the playoffs of that in order to be promoted, you have to travel like really far, and so it doesn't make a difference.
So you still end up having to travel, except they don't have the
So
infrastructure to do it.
I'm not sure exactly how, but they made it actually harder
Yeah.
to get promoted out of there. So
Speaking of regions, you've been to Ecuador, haven't you?
I was going to say, how big is it? How much travel would they really have to do? It's not is it a huge country?
well, I mean, let's go to Map Fight.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my favorite website, mapfight.com. Yeah, it's not .com. It's .xyz.
Oh my God, I didn't even know there was an XYZ.
Let's see. Okay, I think maybe.
Oh, you can put it next to Texas.
You can
I
put.
see.
Oh, where's the
Oh, okay, I was
search?
wondering what map fight.
It is what it sounds like.
Texas versus France.
Yeah.
the
So
first
there should be a search function where you can pop into.
Oh man, the
countries.
first thing that comes up is the area I can compare it to. What should I compare it to?
Compare it to England.
England?
Or the United States.
I was going to compare it to the Premier League.
Oh,
It looks like twice the size of England. Yep.
Okay.
well, that's huge.
Ecuador is twice the size of England. So there is a lot of travel compared to like English teams in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, obviously.
It's a very cool website.
isn't it awesome?
Map, yeah.
Map fight.
And then it makes these
It's
beautiful.
twice the size of England, but doesn't quite fit. You have to rotate it. If you flipped, invert it, and
Yeah.
yeah.
That would require too much tech support for this website. It's a perfect website.
It was very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. MapFight can be one of your sponsors.
So
Yeah.
that would make sense why the Livy's just not helping us. I understand how that would make that playoff structure tough in the lower.
Yeah.
leagues, 'cause that's a lot of ground to cover.
There's also
and it's
mountains.
not just like you've been there. It's not like flat.
No, there's mountains and rainforests and islands and cities.
Yeah.
So it's flying, basically. If you're going
Yeah.
somewhere, you got to fly.
Or-
And that's expensive.
Or buses.
So it is a topographically rich country full of different modes of transportation.
I imagine they might have trains too.
What's their major export?
That is twice
Oil,
the size.
actually.
Oh,
Is it really?
Yeah, oil.
Oh my gosh.
there we go.
An oil-rich country, twice the size of England, with a difficult lower tier soccer
Yeah.
team.
For travel.
For travel.
Yes.
Could be because of the diverse topographical features that go from mountains to
Rainforest.
rainforest to
Islands. The Galapagos
Coastal.
Islands.
Yeah, the Galapagos
I don't know
Islands.
if they have a team there. They probably do somewhere.
That would be great. That would be a great Madagascar sequel.
The penguin.
But
They
and
end up at the Galapagos.
a giant tortoise
second-
wants to try out, but
Yes.
he's too slow.
Oh.
They have their
my
own
gosh.
pace,
So
their
this
own
is all-
game.
this is all good.
Okay.
So, Maria, now you went in and looked at the league, right? What is the team? She's still laughing about the turtle.
He's like, okay.
I'm just listening now.
No, this is now where we need your artistic input. So who did you pick?
I picked. Sorry, now I'm like, how do I say the name? Aucas. I picked Aucas.
Oh, you mean Aucas?
Aucas, yeah.
Aucas.
Yeah.
All right, can you show us what we got?
So actually, I found in digging through this stuff, it was actually hard to find this like research online.
Oh, wow.
They just haven't published much. The teams haven't published much online unless I wasn't searching correctly. But I tried my hand at Spanish Wikipedia as well.
Okay.
So-
This is where we got us.
Yellow and red.
Yes.
Are you-
Ooh. Does
Give
this
us a breakdown first,
does this of the team?
or
Well-
just like what we're looking at?
So the first crest here, there's a shell shape that's filled in with yellow with a red outline.
Very similar to the
Shell gas station. I
and
saw
that you said oil's major. Is there a connection?
See, you saw the connection.
Oh, okay.
Aucas was started in 1945 by Shell,
Get out
by
of here.
Royal Dutch Shell.
How fascinating.
Yes. They were there in Ecuador trying to start drilling for oil.
Oh, wonderful.
And I should describe this crest a little bit further because there's the shell, basically the Shell logo. But on top of that, there's a bust, a figure of a person's head who looks like an indigenous Ecuadorian, you might imagine. It's also in like halftone red. And this person has a crown and earrings. And below that on the shell, this says Aucas.
So it's the outline of like the oil shell.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the point of the shell is the Aucas. And above that is the head of this figure, and whose hair seems to be kind of like
Yeah, it's
blowing,
like blowing
out
in the
at
wind.
each side.
Yeah.
Okay, and a crown.
And so in
That's interesting.
1945, Shell came in and they were exploring for oil, and they went into the rainforest. And in this process, several of their employees were killed by indigenous people in the rainforest who were defending their land.
Okay.
They were from a tribe called the Urani, and the Aucas is a term for warrior. So they named their team after
this tragedy, a personal I mean, to the people who started the team.
Yeah. So they named the team after these really tough people who were like, stop taking our oil or stop entering our home.
What was the thought? Do you know the thought behind that? Because I could understand as an outsider, you're fighting this global corporation, trying to steal your natural resources, invading probably preserved land.
Well, I think
or untouched land.
Shell was like, these guys are tough. We're going to make them our mascot.
We're just going to adopt them.
Yeah. I imagine, it reminds me a lot of pro teams in America who use Native American imagery.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does look like that as well.
Yeah, especially the later on logos.
Cleveland Indians.
Yeah.
Or the Redskins.
Yeah.
So do you, with that in mind, and maybe this comes out in the later discussion, is there pushback within
I tried
Ecuador?
To find it.
Okay.
I couldn't find it.
Interesting.
To be fair, my Spanish skills aren't all there. I imagine this discourse is happening in
Libby's
Spanish.
been on Spanish Duolingo for 30 years, so maybe she can help out.
Still don't understand it.
Oh man. But yeah, a little bit more.
So that's the first one.
Actually, technically, this is the first one. And then 9 years later, they added the figure. So the first one is literally just the Shell logo, but Shell written across the middle of the yellow shell is replaced by Aucas.
Wow.
Yeah, in stencil lettering.
Subtle. It's subtle.
Yeah, and then eventually they added...
And was this a team made up of their employees? Or?
Some of them were employees. A lot of them were they're based in Quito. And a lot of them, a lot of the players were poached from other teams.
Okay.
And originally there wasn't a lot of fan support behind this new Aucas team because they're like, they're just taking the best players from all the other teams. Yeah. But then they started winning.
Yeah, this is the Man City method.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like the Man City of Ecuador.
They started
Brighton.
winning games and winning hearts.
Say it again?
They started winning games and winning hearts.
Oh.
So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights. That's great.
Yes.
So how long did they have that first logo?
Oh, let me just...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, their first 6 years they won their amateur league. And during that time, we're undefeated 3 years, 3 months, and 12 days from the year 45 to 48.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what I mean when they were winning games.
So at the end of that time, they were established as a pretty big club.
Yeah, they were like the hot thing in Quito.
Okay.
So that first logo lasted until the 90s.
Okay.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Can I see that?
Mm-hmm.
So the first one with the face or the first one with the letter?
Shell
the first one
with the face. Okay.
The shell with just the Aucas was 45 to 54-ish.
Oh, wow.
And then the one that has the face was until in the mid-90s.
And did you find anything about is it just a generic Aucas face or was there
someone specific?
I couldn't find anything about that.
It looks in line with comparing it to the U.S. teams that have appropriated Native Americans.
Right.
It looks like a very generalized.
It's so intensely similar aesthetically, and the fact that it's like the Shell brand behind it also feels so American. Mm-hmm. So,
but Shell's not.
Shell was
but
Dutch.
the corporate thing, the corporation thing feels American.
With the colors and the image, it reminds me of because of the colors and image, it almost looks like an American college.
This next
logo.
one definitely does.
Oh, yeah.
Very
Yeah,
varsity.
sure.
So
like Alabama Aucas.
So Shell, I don't know when Shell no longer owned the team, but the Shell is now gone, and now it's just a large A with the same. I do have to say though,
the shell shape is kind of a cool.
It's very
something
cool.
different than like a normal crest.
Exactly.
It's an unusual shape.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's very cool. So now it's like a large red A, like a varsity A.
It's like the Alabama A.
Mm-hmm. A lot like Alabama. The figure's face is now in the hole of the A.
Okay.
Looks more feminine, honestly.
Yeah.
It does.
And almost because you've lost the yellow in this point as well, except in the
And
crown.
with that crown's kind of
Yeah.
like a Wonder Woman.
Exactly.
Yeah, the crown's
Okay.
very,
That is
very, very
exactly-
Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it says SD.
It says that SD Aucas, and that's for
Super duper.
Super Duper. Sociedad Deportiva Aucas.
Ah.
Yes. So this is the 90s. It feels very 90s. It feels.
So that was the 90s.
This is the 90s.
Okay.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
It
This
does
is,
feel very like.
and they had 3 kind of sequential 1990s, early 2000s ones. So
Yeah,
there's
they
this,
changed a lot.
this
in the
first
last
A, and
30
then
years.
after that they added more to it. So there are 8 stars, kind of in an oval pattern above the A. The A is shrunken down. The 8 stars, 6 of them represent those first early wins for their the 45 to 50.
Their winning
one star for
streak.
each season.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then there were 2 after they went professional. There were 2 additional league
Sure.
wins. So that's the next 2 stars, which I think is kind of adorable because like these other teams like Juventus take 1 star for every 20 league titles.
Yeah.
And they have like, we won this season in our amateur league.
Oh.
Let's put a star on there. And
I have to say, just going back to the way the league is structured and the fact that they had 8 years running where they were just dominating, that must have been really boring because then they didn't have any championship games, right? Because
But I wonder at that early stage in the career if it was structured that way because it does seem like it changes almost annually.
Oh, okay.
The way
those early wins were before the professional league even formed.
so they would just have the best
yeah.
record of their league.
Yeah.
and yet they exist on there.
Yeah.
So this is the
then
third
there's
one
like
we're talking. Yeah.
a bow in the Ecuadorian flag colors below the SD Aucas, and 1945 below that, which is the year that it was formed.
So if the second crest design looks like a U.S. college design, I would say this third one looks like a banner for the bowl game that team is playing. Because you have basically the same logo now, but now there's stars over it, and it's on top of this second element that is not integrated whatsoever.
Other than that, it makes an oval or like an
Yeah,
egg
it all
shape
together makes
ultimately.
us-
It's
Circular
Yeah.
definitely
yeah.
like an egg shape, and then they take that and they put it onto an actual oval. And this
It does help. Yeah.
whole
They
thing,
connect it
So you were
all.
talking about the fourth iteration.
they
now.
bring
Okay.
they bring back the yellow, which is nice, and then there's the red outline, and that kind of calls back to the original shell,
Absolutely.
which I like the history of going back to like the origins.
And this one where they enclosed all of that. What years are we looking at? Do we know?
It says 2003 at the very bottom.
Okay.
Right below 1945.
Okay.
And everything else has remained basically the same.
They just kept jamming it in there.
Yeah.
There is
They-
a lot in that
going
oval.
But you know what it reminds me of? Because of the oval shape and also this bow. It's like a reverse of Juventus because Juventus has the bow at the top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it seemed to them to be very soccery.
Well, the integration of the blue
Yeah, I was
and
just
that
gonna
one
say that's
before
new.
is very tied in. So they're bringing in the national colors.
Oh.
So they
Well,
already
this
had
is
the
the-
yellow and the red, but the blue
The
now
blue's
makes
right
it
here,
national.
too.
Yeah, I was saying in the third iteration and the fourth iteration.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But
And
then-
I read somewhere that they wanted to incorporate the Ecuadorian national colors because this is like the only team that has a truly Ecuadorian name.
Oh, okay.
So whether that's intentional or not, who knows?
So maybe
and a
that kind of
generic
makes me.
representation of an indigenous
Exactly.
person.
But it
made
does
by
make
Shaw.
me think maybe they're embracing the Aucas and kind of
There's not a pushback.
yeah.
They're yeah. I mean, I couldn't find anything. That doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future.
You'll hear
So
from your
you
Ecuadorian.
said
listeners.
Aucas is warrior, right?
Yeah, based on the Urani tribes.
Okay.
That's the really remote indigenous people in eastern Ecuador in the rainforest. Yeah, and so that was that until somewhere around 2015.
Okay.
And that's when they kind of modernized everything. And this was more it's like a callback to the original design. So it's very
much,
similar, but instead of a shell shape, it is a shield to follow in lines with the rules of
The heraldry rules.
heraldry.
What?
Apparently, there are heraldry rules.
Yes.
In FIFA? No. In,
No, just in the design of heraldry.
oh. Okay.
There are rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course there is.
We will someday find the keeper of these rules. But the shield is more European. And they have a first version is a bit pointier, a bit brighter. And then the second version feels much more modern. Mm-hmm. So it looks less hand done or like a little less blotty, and it's much crisper. Mm-hmm. The font is modernized, and they dropped the 1945. And it looks very modern.
It's pretty wild that they really just plucked the illustration from the original crest and put in terms of the face of the Aucas.
I wonder if they would have even tried the shell again if it weren't maybe a copyright issue. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Because it's kind of the shape is kind of an inverted shell shape. And then there's just one slight variation after that change, right?
That's the second one. That's the last one. That's the current logo. And that's the one that's much more modern.
And they made
the warrior figure is a little tougher.
Yeah, it's more masculine now.
Yeah.
Nice font. I like that font.
It's good. This is an interesting one. I really enjoy the first kind of weird one, even though it's a complicated history. Maybe
It's complicated.
It's so different.
If we remove like any moral questions from this, it's
Visual,
very cool.
We're talking about global, football. We have to remove all moral questions.
Yeah. The new one feels a little cold. I kind of like the frumpier illustration.
I tend to like the frumpier illustrations too.
Well, we've talked about that on the show that the older clubs, their older designs have a handmade regional quality.
Yeah.
And they're not as like made to be on T-shirts and banners. Mm-hmm. They're not as crisp. And that gives them a sense of history and authenticity. Mm-hmm. Whereas like new, very cold ones are, very corporate.
They print well, I'm sure.
They print,
you said, on the shirts and on the...
Yeah. The one thing I read was there was a lot of intention behind the new one to make it appeal to younger people.
Oh, I don't know if that's the case.
Maybe I think now in the U.S., young people, they're going for the retro look,
right.
But maybe in Ecuador they like the modern take on things.
Like the terrible photography trend on Instagram, where it's like all the worst photographs are the ones they post. And
they want it to look like old digital cameras.
Yeah, and just crappy. Like, I think it's the crappy quality, but it's also crappy composition and like,
oh my God,
unflattering.
We're just making a new Gen X here. Well, that was fascinating. I know we're going to touch on a few more other crests from the league as well. But before we do that, I went a different route this week, and I chose the Ecuadorian national team crest because in this past World Cup, I was really impressed by the design of their crest and their kits. And I'm going to just give a brief explanation of its evolution. And then there's a little video that the Federation released when they did a very dramatic redesign in 2020. And I would just like to hear us kind of talk about that. So the Ecuadorian national crest has always been, from 1941 until 2020, basically some variation of the same thing. And that is a shield, a triangular shield that has three stripes of the national colors: yellow, which is 2/3 of the shield, and then blue. Yellow, which is, I would say, half of the shield, and then the remaining half is split between a blue band and a red band. And then on top of that is the Ecuadorian condor.
Oh, condor! That's what.
So it's rested. So so imagine kind of a slightly more majestic vulture looking.
What's not
At
majestic about vultures?
No. I mean, even
What do you have against vultures?
Even more
Even more majestic.
vulture.
At first glance, it kind of looks eagle-like, especially more so in some than others.
And they've done it's an interesting juxtaposition between that shield, which is very triangular, and then it's almost an inversed, then a repeated triangle with the angle of the wings, because the wings of the condor are outstretched, so making again like kind of
like a bowl
shape. And it's varied from year to year, where the feathers of the condor are indicated by dashes. Sometimes those are enclosed by a line. Sometimes it's open. I would say the biggest shifts that really happened in that 1941 to 2020 period, where in 1969 they added the initials AEF, which is for the Ecuadorian Football Association, onto the crest at the top. And then in 77, the condor got kind of a funky redesign.
Why is it so pink?
So it became a little more, I mean, maybe
Cartoonish.
influenced by what was going on in the Premier League logos at that time. Its head is more swoopy and yellow. It's kind of, it does look more like it's out of like the
It's
goofy
goofy.
condor.
It is, yeah.
They returned in 77 to something more in line with past ones. And then in 85 to 91, there was another dramatic change where all these previous iterations, the condor and the outline of the shield were in black. They switched that to blue, again tied in with the national colors. And then they changed the shape pretty, compared to past years, more dramatically of the shield, where now across the top, there's a raised plateau that the condor is resting on. And then the condor is very stylized. It's the first time where the feathers are depicted as continuous horizontal lines versus the dashed lines that have appeared in other. I don't like it.
I don't either. It almost looks like the old United emblem, but they
United
stick
Airlines.
Yeah. But they stuck a head sticking out of it.
We're not soccer back guys.
Yeah, you can't just say United.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Which United?
Yeah.
But you missed a difference. I mean, that is drastic. But what about FEF versus AEF? The initials change.
Oh yeah, so it's just the name of the association. So Ecuador Football Association to the Federation of Ecuadorian Football.
Got it.
So they changed the name of the federation. So it did. That is also around 91. It switched to FEF, and then 91 there was a little bit of change. They returned back to one of their more recognizable logos, but now it was encased within another shield. And then from 93 to 2020, it's basically like their very first one, except with FEF across. And then in 2020, they did a very dramatic redesign. And before we talk about it, they, instead of releasing an explanation of here's what we're doing, why, and this element means this, and this element means that, and breaking it down, they just released this video to show it. So I'm going to play this.
You can do that. Can you see it?
I see.
She's saying it. So before we talk about your reaction to that, I'm just going to explain a little bit, because we're not going to play us just listening the whole video, but it was a short video, and it was beautifully hand animated.
It's gorgeous.
And it brought together the different elements that were the inspiration for the logo. So like they showed the blue sky over the mountains tied into the blue color, the yellow of a flowering tree. What tree is that? I don't know. But they're like tied into the yellow, and then they kind of inferred blood for the red. And then they reference a pre-Columbian sculptural or architectural piece that mimicked this half circle that's at the bottom of the logo. And then again, a lot tied in with a condor. So the new logo, what it looks like, it is a crest shape. So there's it's a blue crest outlining in gold. On top of it, there is a band that's slightly narrower in width than the crest. with, again, half of that being yellow, so the same division. So it's also kind of like landscape. And then a blue section and a red section. So you have the national colors, a reference to the previous crests. But then now within the crest is at first what looks like almost abstract mark making. But when you look at it, you realize it's FEF, but the first F is flipped, so it's facing the wrong way. And the angle of the letters are such that the F on the left is angling up to the left, the F on the right is angling up to the right, and they're pointing down to meet in the center of the E. And then that is sitting on top of a almost smooth half circle that has a slight point at the bottom that is both reminiscent, again, of the condor, but also of that sculpture we saw. And then also you can kind of see the condor shape in that angle of the letters I mentioned before. And this was all seen in the video. So what did you think of that video, Liv?
That video was beautiful. It was such a great way to introduce a crest. I mean, and I'm kind of seduced by the video, and now I'm like respecting everything in the crest, where at first it felt kind of, I wasn't all that into it. Like, oh, I don't know.
Well, there was things I wouldn't have thought of. You were just, you didn't say, but you kind of drew your fingers across your cheek at one point. In the video, they reference also the very angular lines, dual lines on this crest and the Fs to an indigenous Ecuadorian who is painting their face with similar lines. So it's kind of a tie-in more to their indigenous culture, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Does everyone have an animation like that?
No, I think it's really unusual.
No.
Yeah.
They saw everyone else modernize their logos and get hate.
Yeah.
And so they're like, we need to do something about this. Very smart.
Yeah, no, it's very smart. And I, like I said, I didn't think too much of the logo. I think it's well designed. It's a cool use of space and balance of line, and I love the offset at the top. But I go more for the goofy stuff, I guess, when it comes to these crests, and it's tight. It's just like really
it is a
tight.
very like well designed, adaptable to a lot of things. I like it because I always respect when any entity makes a bold move, and this was a pretty bold shift, and not without pushback. There's a lot of like Ecuadorian fans who, it's a real love it, hate it type of thing. But what I appreciate, they went for it. Like I see a designer's intent in this, and there was some trust in like, okay, let's go with it because of all the very thought out references. So it seems contemporary, but those things are tied into it, which I enjoy. But it's starkly different.
It's classy too.
Oh yeah,
like it's a classy logo, because some of these modern versions they make them look like a corporate logo, and it's not classy anymore. But this,
And
by class, you mean it's still relatively ornate?
Yeah,
the color scheme,
somehow
like
they
gold
managed to
and blue?
keep it simple, but yet ornate. And it looks like it, like, I don't know if there's embossing on this image we're looking at, but it looks like an enamel pin.
So, Maria, what is your take on Ecuador's football culture from the very tiny view that we took in today?
Oh, we took such a tiny view. I don't know if this is accurate, but it feels very local.
Yeah,
I think,
have that
like,
feeling.
especially with Aucas, I was looking at the makeup of the team, and like everyone on the team except for 3 people were all Ecuadorian.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, that's incredible. That's so local. Its rivalries are with local Quito teams.
Mm-hmm.
I was also fascinated that they won the league last year. It's the first time they had ever won the Liga Pro, and they'd spent a lot of time in different levels of the league, more than you see in other countries' professional leagues.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to me, and it seems like less of like powerhouse money except for when they were dominating, when they were owned by Shell.
Very early on.
Yeah, and there are like 3 teams that tend to dominate, but I don't know. This might not be accurate, but it seemed less like state-run like we see with other teams.
Yeah. I would say my takeaway is just kind of a reminder that how much talent is in that country, and that while it's not as corporate, I think it's probably underdeveloped the league a little bit in terms of consistency and pathways for those players. Like, I don't know, maybe some of the top clubs have clear pathways to bigger teams and bigger countries and opportunities. But you just look at that and you wonder how much talent might be lost in a system like that. But it's good to see on the national team level how they're really turning things around. And the other side is just with a lot of the imagery on the national team side and research into the country, I think it's true for a lot of South America, and just like how undervalued resource as a continent it is. You know what I mean? I know obviously people value it for natural resources and exploit it quite a bit. But it's just, you're reminded of, like, saying the country, the diversity of, as you mentioned, the topography, the richness of that. We didn't go into, because again, it's very complex, but the very complex and rich histories of all these countries, of like the waves of different kind of, from pre-Columbian empires that were all battling each other, to the Spanish, to present day. There's just a lot of history woven into these countries, and very rich countries. And as you know, because you visited, this seems like an incredibly beautiful place as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it really colorful? Like, in terms of like, not the natural world, but in terms of like buildings and...
I'm trying to think back. I didn't spend much time in Quito, but there's a section of the city that's like the old Quito, and I remember being just really taken by it, and it was incredibly beautiful. And there's one of the most beautiful cathedrals I've ever seen that's like all covered in gold.
Oh my gosh.
On the inside. That's like my strongest memory of that.
All right. So that was Ecuador. Should we keep doing this for a few more weeks?
Yeah.
With the crest? So I just went ahead and typed our next random country generator, and you want to tell the people what we got?
Belgium.
Belgium. The dumb Netherlands. I'm just kidding. I say that with love, because we are both from Dutch descent. So I think this could be interesting.
Yeah, this will be great.
De Bruyne territory. Yeah.
This will be maybe a longer history than we've had the last couple weeks.
It'll be easier to find history on the clubs, I imagine.
And we're both fluent in Dutch, so that should be helpful.
Yeah. All right. Until next week. Thanks for listening to the entire episode of the Footy Museum Pod. The Footy Museum is a project to highlight the culture and design surrounding football across the world. If you want to find out more about our projects, or be aware of what we're doing as things develop in the future, you can go to thefootymuseum.com. That's it. Anything else from you, Maria? Anything else from you, Maria?
Go Leeds. Bye.
Go to the championship.